The Force had always whispered to the Jedi, but rarely did it scream. In the closing months of the Clone Wars, as blaster fire echoed across 1,000 systems, and the Republic's banners still flew over Coruscant's endless spires, the Force began to feel crowded, heavy, as though something vast and malignant had settled at the galaxy's core and was bending events toward an unseen catastrophe. From the high windows of the Jedi Temple, the city planet stretched into infinity, lanes of traffic glowing like veins of light, the distant thunder of industry never ceasing. Within the council chamber, however, there was only silence. Yoda sat at the center, his ears drooping more than usual, ancient eyes half-lidded in meditation. Mace Windu stood rather than sat, hands clasped behind his back, gaze fixed on the stars beyond the transparisteel. Around them, the remaining members of the Jedi High Council waited, each feeling the same disturbance, yet interpreting it through their own fears. "This is no longer mere unease," Ki-Adi-Mundi finally said, breaking the stillness. "Entire battlefronts shift without strategic cause. Senate votes pass too quickly. Emergency powers are renewed without resistance." "And always," added Plo Koon quietly, "the Chancellor is at the center of it." Mace turned from the window. "We have suspected his influence for some time, but suspicion is not proof." "No," Obi-Wan Kenobi agreed, seated with his hands folded, his voice calm but strained. "And yet the Force itself seems constrained, as though choice is being narrowed." Yoda's eyes opened fully. "Clouded, the future is, but darker than before." He tapped his Jimmer stick once against the floor. "A shadow, not of war alone." At Mace's gesture, Jocasta Nu entered, a small data cylinder hovering beside her. The temple's chief archivist looked uneasy, an unusual sight for someone so devoted to order and record. "At Master Windu's request," she said, "I conducted a restricted audit of Republic military contingency protocols, specifically executive removal directives." Several council members straightened. "There are only two," Jocasta continued. Order 66, authorizing clone forces to eliminate Jedi leadership in the event of treason, and Order 65. The number hung in the air like a blade. "Define it," Mace said. Jocasta swallowed. Order 65 authorizes the removal, by arrest or lethal force, of the Supreme Chancellor, should the Senate or the Jedi Council determine he has become a threat to the Republic. Silence returned, heavier than before. "So it exists," Obi-Wan murmured. "A lawful means to stop tyranny. Never used," Ki-Adi-Mundi said. "Never even discussed." "Because to invoke it," Mace replied, "is to admit the Republic has already failed." Yoda closed his eyes again. Visions flickered behind them, fire consuming the temple, clone troopers turning their rifles inward, a hooded figure laughing as the galaxy burned. He could not see the details, only the outcome. Ruin, if nothing changed. "Long have we waited," Yoda said slowly, "trusting in process, in balance. But the Force now cries out. Act we must or be swept aside." A hollow projector ignited at the chamber center, displaying encrypted clone command hierarchies. Obi-Wan leaned forward, recognition dawning. "These command codes," he said, "they're embedded deeper than standard military orders. Hard-coded obedience triggers." "Which means," Plo Koon said, "if Order 65 is issued correctly, the clones must comply, even against Palpatine." Mace's jaw tightened. "Unless there is another order that supersedes it." No one said the number aloud. From the depths of Coruscant, in a spire crowned with Republic insignia, Chancellor Palpatine sat alone in his office. The city lights reflected in the glass behind him, bathing the room in gold and shadow. His expression was calm, almost serene, but his fingers paused mid-motion as he sensed it, a ripple, faint but unmistakable. The Jedi were moving, not yet openly, not clumsily, but with purpose. Interesting. For years, he had guided them like band the led to slaughter, nudging, provoking, allowing them just enough freedom to feel righteous while tightening the noose around their order. He had planned every contingency, every betrayal, every scream. But this was unexpected. "They are closer than they know," Palpatine murmured to the empty room. closer than they should be. Back in the temple, the council faced the truth none of them wanted to name. If they activated Order 65, they would no longer be peacekeepers. They would be executioners of state power, generals turning on the very government they served. And yet, if they did nothing, Mace Windu stepped into the center of the chamber. "We are Jedi," he said, voice firm. "Not politicians, not soldiers, but guardians of the Republic. And if the Republic's greatest threat wears its highest office?" Obi-Wan asked softly. Mace met his gaze. "Then we decide whether the law exists to protect the people, or the man who bends it." Yoda raised his hand, and the chamber stilled. "Decide soon, we must. The Force will not wait." If you want to see more alternate Star Wars destinies explored, more moments where a single decision reshapes the galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a what-if scenario you want to see next in the comments below. May the Force be with you. Outside, Coruscant's traffic continued its endless flow, unaware that history had just shifted. Somewhere in the clone barracks, dormant command protocols waited patiently. Somewhere in the Force, destiny held its breath. The contingency no one had ever used was no longer theoretical. The decision did not come with raised voices or clashing tempers. It came the way the most dangerous choices often did, quietly, with measured words, and the weight of inevitability pressing down on every breath. The Jedi Council reconvened under sealed conditions. Temple security was doubled. The guard posted at every approach, their yellow armor gleaming beneath the chamber's soft light. Outside, the hum of Coruscant continued as always, oblivious to the storm gathering within its heart. Mace Windu stood again, though this time his posture lacked the rigid certainty he so often carried into battle. Before him hovered a hologram of the Republic's constitutional framework, branching lines of authority radiating outward from the Chancellor's office. "Order 65, he began, requires one of two triggers: a supermajority vote of the Senate, or unanimous consent of the Jedi High Council." A murmur rippled through the chamber. "The Senate will never act in time," Ki-Adi-Mundi said flatly. "Palpatine controls its agenda too thoroughly. And if we attempt to force the issue," Plo Koon added, "we expose ourselves before we are ready." "All the more reason," May said, "that this decision falls to us." Obi-Wan Kenobi felt the weight of that responsibility settle, like a physical burden across his shoulders. He had commanded armies, negotiated ceasefires, watched friends die. Yet none of that compared to what lay before them now. "This is not an arrest warrant," Obi-Wan said carefully. "It is an accusation backed by military force. If we are wrong, we will have ended the Jedi Order ourselves," Ki-Adi-Mundi finished. Yoda stirred, his small form straightening. "Wrong we may be, but blind we cannot remain." His gaze swept the chamber. "Ask yourselves, peaceful has this war become? Shorter? Or endless, it grows, always justifying more power?" Visions flickered through several minds at once. Burning worlds, clone troopers marching beneath banners that were no longer the Republic's. A throne room of black stone. "I have seen the same futures," Plo Koon said quietly. "Different paths, same destination." Mace exhaled slowly. "Then this vote is not about certainty. It is about responsibility." One by one, the council members spoke. Depa Billaba, her voice steady despite the tension. "I vote yes. If we do not act now, we will never act." Ki-Adi-Mundi hesitated longer. "The law exists to restrain power," he said at last. "Even when that power is popular." He inclined his head. "Yes." Plo Koon followed. "For the Republic." Adi Gallia. "Yes." Shakti. "Yes." All eyes turned to Obi-Wan. He thought of Anakin, of the young man's faith in the Chancellor, of the way Palpatine spoke to him as a confidant rather than a subordinate. He thought of the Jedi Code, of patience and trust, of how often those virtues had been exploited. "If we proceed," Obi-Wan said, "we must do so with restraint. No spectacle, no bloodshed unless there is no alternative." Mace nodded once. "Agreed." Obi-Wan met Yoda's gaze, then lowered his head. "Yes." At last, Yoda closed his eyes. The Force swirled around him, heavy and turbulent. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. "Yes," he said. The holo display shifted. Authorization codes cascaded downward, ancient contingencies awakening from dormancy. Order 65 was now active. Across the galaxy, encrypted transmissions surged through Republic military channels, coded bursts indistinguishable from routine updates to all but the most deeply authorized recipients. On Salakami, Commander Bly stiffened as the signal reached his neural implant. His visor display flashed briefly, then resolved into a stark directive. Contingency Order 65 confirmed. Target: Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. Priority: immediate, ****. Bly's breath caught. On Christophsis, on Mygeeto, on the bridge of countless Venators drifting through the void, clone commanders felt the same jolt of cognitive dissonance. Their training screamed obedience. Their instincts reeled. This was not an order to fight droids. This was not an order to hunt traitorous Jedi. This was an order to turn inward, to protect the Republic from the man who commanded it. On Coruscant, Captain Rex stood in the 501st Barracks, helmet under his arm, staring at the command text reflected in the polished floor. His jaw tightened. "General Skywalker isn't listed," he muttered. The order did not name Anakin Skywalker. It did not explain itself. It did not offer context. Only certainty. Rex keyed his comlink. "Cody, you seeing this?" A pause. Then, "Yeah, I am." Neither spoke for several seconds. Back in the Jedi Temple, Mace Windu felt the shift ripple outward like a stone dropped into deep water. The Force reacted not violently, but sharply, as though something long restrained had begun to move. "It's done," he said. Yoda opened his eyes. "Begun it has. Ended no." In his office, Chancellor Palpatine rose slowly from his chair. So, they had chosen courage after all. He smiled thinly. "So be it," he whispered, dark amusement lacing his words. "Let us see how well the Jedi understand the weapons they believe they control." Far below, clone legions prepared to move, not against the enemy they had trained their entire lives to fight, but against the heart of the Republic itself. The vote in silence had been cast. Now the galaxy would answer. The galaxy had never seen the clones hesitate before. They were trained to follow orders without question, to strike without doubt, to trust in the chain of command above all else. Yet the order they now held in their neural implants carried an unfamiliar weight. It was not an attack on separatist droid armies, nor an operation sanctioned by a planetary governor. This order was direct, personal, and political. It commanded them to strike at the very apex of power in the Republic, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. Across the inner rim, in the battle-scarred corridors of Venator-class star destroyers, clone commanders convened over encrypted holocoms. Commander Bly of the 327th and Commander Cody of the 212th exchanged tense nods visible through their helmets. "Do you realize what this means?" Cody asked, his voice clipped but low enough to suggest hesitation. "We're being asked to act on our own judgment, or at least what passes for it in the order." Bly's visor reflected the holographic projection of the Chancellor. His face looked calm, almost serene, a stark contrast to the chaos the clones now felt. "It's what the Council wants. They believe he's a threat. Their word is law for us." Cody exhaled sharply. "And if we're wrong? If the Council misjudges and the galaxy collapses?" "The law is clear," Bly said, "and the order is coded into our very programming. We obey, or we cease to be soldiers. It's that simple." Meanwhile, on Coruscant, Palpatine's personal office hummed with energy. The Chancellor had sensed a disturbance, a subtle shift in the Force. It was not merely the Jedi's deliberation. It was the activation of their contingency plan. His eyes, narrowed behind golden-brown lids, traced the flow of holonet traffic, scanning for any anomalies in clone command signals. Every hidden protocol, every secret code embedded within the Republic's military framework was visible to him. Yet none had forewarned him that Order 65 could be executed. He smirked faintly. "Interesting," he murmured. The Jedi believe they hold the strings. Let us see if they can pull them without tearing their hands. At the same time, Commander Rex, stationed in the Temple District, felt the first tangible effects of the Order ripple through his unit. The clones, trained to respond to Jedi commands, now waited for instruction not from their general, but from the very codes embedded deep within their systems. A signal had reached them, a silent, digital nudge guiding their actions. Rex turned to the other clones under his command. "You know the drill," he said, keeping his voice even. "We follow the order, but we proceed carefully. We don't make a mistake." The battalion assembled, moving with precision and speed. Across Coruscant, Venators and gunships prepared for deployment. This was no standard military maneuver. This was a calculated infiltration, an operation that required as much political cunning as martial skill. Every step had to be executed perfectly to avoid public chaos, collateral damage, or the accidental death of innocents. Jedi Masters overseeing the operation from within the temple maintained silent observation. Mace Windu, standing on a balcony overlooking the cityscape, felt the force tighten around him like a cord of living energy. "They follow," he whispered, "but the balance is delicate. Too little restraint, and the galaxy burns. Too much hesitation, and the target escapes." Obi-Wan Kenobi, stationed in the strategic planning chamber, monitored clone movements on multiple holodisplays. He felt the anxiety of the young soldiers, their loyalty tested in ways few could endure. "They're soldiers," he said softly. "But even soldiers are not machines. Fear, doubt these are human, and humans make mistakes." Meanwhile, in the shadowed corridors of the Chancellor's office, Palpatine began to enact contingency measures of his own. Hidden in secure compartments, dark holocrons from the Sith archives glowed faintly, ready to release their power. The Chancellor could feel the threads of the Force unraveling, yet he was not yet in peril, only aware that the Jedi had taken their first deliberate step against him. On the streets below, civilians were oblivious to the intricate web of politics, military strategy, and Force-guided observation unfolding above their heads. Air speeders zipped through the sky lanes, holoboards flashed propaganda for the war effort, and in the Senate district, aides scurried to deliver messages. But within the clone barracks and the Jedi Temple, the galaxy's future had shifted irreversibly. Rex and his squad advanced cautiously. Blaster rifles were slung at the ready, but no shots were fired yet. Each step toward the Chancellor's office was a step into uncertainty, a step into a moral and political battlefield unlike any they had encountered. Every clone sensed the weight of the Jedi's decision, felt it embedded in the very commands etched into their neural pathways. Palpatine, watching through the augmented surveillance of the temple and the city, smiled thinly. The game had begun. He could feel the approach of the clones, the tension in the Jedi, and even the faint, trembling uncertainty in Anakin Skywalker, who had not yet been told of the Council's action. Every player was in motion, every piece moving toward the inevitable collision that would decide the fate of the Republic. The Force shivered as the first clone battalions crossed the temple's outer perimeter. There was no immediate violence, only disciplined, precise positioning. The Jedi observed quietly, each sensing the moral weight pressing on the soldiers' minds, the unspoken question of obedience versus conscience hanging over every clone. Rex, adjusting his helmet, thought of the countless battles he had fought, droid armies, separatist generals, planetary uprisings. Nothing had prepared him for this. Nothing could. Here, he was not merely a soldier, but a participant in a trial of conscience. As the battalion moved into position, the first transmissions of political alarm began to flicker through Senate networks. Senators, sensing a sudden shift in command signals, whispered of coup attempts, whispers of assassination. Palpatine, seeing the alerts but remaining composed, allowed them to flow unchallenged. Chaos, after all, was a tool to be sharpened. By the time the Jedi and clones were fully aligned in position, the city above and the temple below was charged with anticipation. The operation was underway, but the first contact, the moment when law, force, and power would intersect, had not yet arrived. Every eye, every sensor, every force-sensitive intuition was waiting for the first movement to define the course of history. In that suspended moment, Mace Windu allowed himself a single thought. We act not out of vengeance, nor fear, nor power, but because the Republic itself demands it. The clones were ready. The Jedi were ready. And for the first time, the Chancellor realized that his position, though carefully constructed over decades, was now genuinely threatened. The first strike of Order 65 was imminent. Palpatine had prepared for many eventualities, but never one like this. A lawful insurrection executed not by an enemy fleet, not by a separatist general, but by the very guardians of the Republic themselves. His fingers hovered over the dark holocrons hidden in secret compartments beneath his office floor. Each pulsed faintly with ancient Sith energy, promising power but demanding precise control. Any misstep could trigger them to backfire. The Jedi, they truly believe they can enforce justice without cost, he murmured to himself. How quaint. Outside the office, the first wave of clone battalions had reached the lower terraces of the Coruscant Senate District. Their movements were precise, almost ceremonial, but every step carried immense potential for catastrophe. The clones obeyed their programming, but instinctively, some sensed hesitation. The Chancellor was not a droid. He was not a separatist general. He was human, and human unpredictability could shatter even the strictest code. Commander Cody signaled his squad. Hold positions. Wait for confirmation from Temple Command. The Jedi Masters observed from elevated balconies. Mace Windu's hand rested lightly on his lightsaber hilt. He knew that once the operation began, restraint would be necessary, but restraint could be lethal if misjudged. Obi-Wan stood nearby, analyzing the mental states of clone commanders. Anxiety, doubt, duty, each variable needed to be accounted for. Deep inside the Senate spire, Palpatine projected an air of calm before the storm. Holonet channels broadcast normal procedural messages, while in the shadows, Sith-altered systems quietly monitored every clone position. The Chancellor could feel the Force pulsing differently around him, a subtle yet unmistakable tension that only the most powerful of Force users could sense. Anakin Skywalker entered the scene unaware. He had been summoned to the temple by an ambiguous message from the Council, ostensibly for a briefing on the war's progress. The young Jedi's senses picked up the tension immediately. Clones moved differently. Jedi faces were tighter, movements sharper. Something had shifted. Master Windu, he said, approaching carefully. What's happening? Why is everyone so tense? Mace studied him, weighing the consequences of full disclosure. We have a duty, Anakin. One that may seem extreme. Anakin frowned. Extreme how? Against whom? The Jedi Master hesitated, then decided to offer only a fragment of the truth. Against the man you have trusted most. At that, Anakin froze. Something primal stirred in him, a mixture of disbelief, fear, and instinctive suspicion. He had grown to trust Palpatine like a mentor, almost a second father. Now the Jedi implied that trust was misplaced. The Force tugged at him, warning him of disruption, but not fully revealing the danger. Meanwhile, Palpatine initiated his first countermeasures. Holocrons activated, projecting subtle illusions and diversions across Coruscant. Some corridors were rendered impassable, lights flickered, and automated security systems misdirected the approaching clones. Nothing lethal, yet, but enough to slow the operation and test the precision of Jedi coordination. Commander Bly noticed the anomalies first. The corridors, they're changing. Are we being guided or manipulated? Rex, tracking multiple squads, recognized the pattern immediately. It's deliberate, he said. The Chancellor's behind it. Expect traps. As clone units advanced, Jedi Masters coordinated telepathically through the Force. Plo Koon's precise sense of positioning allowed a squad to circumvent a security blockade. Shock T monitored civilian movement, ensuring no innocent lives were endangered. Jedi discipline clashed with clone loyalty codes in a delicate dance. Every step forward required calculation, anticipation, and sometimes improvisation. Palpatine, in the center of a spire, allowed a faint, almost imperceptible smile. He had expected this, the calculated move against him. But what he had not fully accounted for was the precision and moral resolve of the Jedi. They were not only acting on law, they were acting with the weight of the galaxy's conscience behind them. In the adjacent corridors, Anakin began to sense the manipulation. He noticed subtle shifts in the clone's behavior, felt the faint vibrations in the Force that indicated a conflict in programming. Something was wrong, too wrong. Yet, he did not know enough to intervene, only enough to question. Mace Windu signaled the first strategic push. Clones moved through unobstructed corridors toward the Chancellor's office. Jedi provided guidance, cutting through obstacles and neutralizing security measures without lethality. Palpatine's defenses held, but only partially. Holocrons flickered, arcane energy bouncing off walls and security panels. The tension inside the spire reached its peak. Palpatine, still masked by authority and pretense, addressed the approaching forces. "Jedi," he intoned, voice smooth as silk. "Do you truly believe this path ensures peace? Or does it merely feed your own arrogance?" Mace stepped forward, lightsaber in hand but not yet ignited. "We act not for power, Chancellor, but to protect the Republic. Every day you hold office unchecked is another day of manipulation and deceit. This ends now." Palpatine's eyes narrowed. The first cracks in his veneer appeared, not of fear, but calculation. He began to channel the Force in subtle, protective ways, altering perception, influencing clones at the margins, and setting the stage for contingencies he had stored for decades. Anakin, watching, felt the conflict intensify inside him. Loyalty to his mentor warred with instinctive trust in the Jedi. The tension was unbearable. He could feel the Force pulling him toward decisions he could not yet make. For the first time in decades, the Chancellor was truly on the defensive. And for the first time, the Jedi realized that removing him from power, even with the full might of their legal authority, would be a test far beyond lightsabers and blaster fire. Order 65 had begun. The corridors of the Senate spire were tense with unspoken anticipation. Clones moved with precise coordination, their blasters held low, scanning every corner. The Jedi guided them with subtle nudges of the Force, keeping civilian traffic and security personnel out of harm's way. Still, the operation carried an unnatural weight. This was not a mission against droids or separatist generals. This was a mission against the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic himself. Anakin Skywalker had been kept intentionally out of the full briefing, though the Jedi Council hoped his presence would not compromise the operation. Yet as he followed quietly behind Mace Windu and Obi-Wan Kenobi, the young Jedi could sense the tension in the clones, the weight of their orders pressing on every thought. It was a different kind of battle, one waged in silence and protocol, rather than with open combat. He glanced at Mace Windu. "Master Windu, why didn't you tell me?" Mace's expression was unreadable. "Your place is here, Anakin, as support. Decisions of this magnitude require clarity. Too many opinions risk failure." Anakin's jaw tightened. He knew instinctively that something monumental was underway, something that would shape the fate of the galaxy. And Palpatine? The Jedi Master's eyes hardened. The Chancellor is the target. The Jedi act to protect the Republic. That is all you need to know. Anakin swallowed uneasily. Trusting Mace Windu was difficult under normal circumstances. Now, it felt like walking a tightrope over an abyss. Still, he obeyed. The first clone squads reached the floor directly beneath the Chancellor's office. Surveillance droids had been neutralized, corridors mapped by Force-sensitive Jedi to avoid detection. Palpatine had anticipated many conventional approaches, but the combination of Jedi insight and clone discipline was unprecedented. Cody and Rex coordinated movements across multiple squads, communicating in brief, precise bursts. "Hold here," Cody ordered. "Let the Jedi guide the path forward. Minimal exposure." Above them, Palpatine watched through reinforced viewports. His fingers hovered over concealed Sith holocrons, each containing knowledge and defensive measures accumulated over decades. His smile was calm, almost serene, but there was a spark of something dangerous lurking beneath it. "They are clever," he whispered. too clever to fail entirely, yet naive enough to underestimate me. The first confrontation occurred in a service corridor near the Spire's core. Automated defenses, subtly influenced by the dark side, triggered low-level shocks and false alarms, testing the clone's obedience and the Jedi's coordination. Mace Windu and Plo Koon moved forward, deflecting mechanical traps with precise force manipulation. Anakin sensed the subtle corruption in the corridor, traces of the dark side, faint yet palpable. He hesitated. "Master, something's not right." Obi-Wan's voice was calm but firm. "Stay focused, Anakin. This is the test of discipline." Every step brought them closer to the Chancellor's private office. Civilians had been evacuated or redirected. Security teams had either been incapacitated or convinced to stand down through Jedi persuasion and carefully crafted directives. It was an operation balanced on the knife's edge of legality and morality. As the squad approached the inner sanctum, Palpatine made his first direct move. A subtle force push rippled outward, not enough to injure, but enough to destabilize clone movements and send Jedi defenses into sharp adjustment. The clones hesitated, and for a brief moment, the operation risked unraveling. Mace Windu felt the force shift. "He's resisting," he said quietly, "but he's not yet attacking. This is defensive, not yet lethal." Obi-Wan glanced at Anakin. "Watch and learn, but do not act until ordered." The Chancellor's calm mask began to slip, revealing the predator beneath. He had sensed the approaching threat, and now, for the first time, the Jedi were not only acting with authority, they were acting with the full weight of law, military power, and moral resolve against him. A squad of clones, guided by Jedi insight, reached the office entrance. Rex signaled the others to hold position. "Wait for the order," he said. "Do it clean, do it right." Palpatine stood in the center of the office, the sunlight from Coruscant's skyline illuminating him like a halo. His voice, smooth and commanding, filled the corridor. "You come here believing justice is on your side," he said. "But justice is a blade that cuts both ways. Are you prepared for the consequences?" Mace Windu stepped forward, lightsaber drawn but not yet ignited. "We are prepared to protect the Republic from anyone, even you, Chancellor." Anakin felt the tension in the Force, as if the very air were charged with electricity. Every instinct screamed that this moment was pivotal, not just for the Jedi or the clones, but for the fate of the Republic and the galaxy itself. Then Palpatine acted, not with open aggression, but with subtle, precise manipulation of the Force, influencing the clones' neural implants at the margins, creating small delays, second-guessing movements, sowing confusion. It was a demonstration of his power without committing to combat, a test of the Jedi's resolve and the clones' obedience. Rex noticed the hesitation ripple through his battalion. "They're being influenced," he muttered. "Watch the patterns." Mace Windu's eyes narrowed. "Focus. Discipline. We continue." The operation had escalated into a high-stakes game of anticipation, foresight, and controlled authority. Every step forward was calculated, every motion scrutinized, every reaction tested. Order 65 had brought the Jedi to Palpatine's doorstep, but the first true confrontation, where law, force, and power would collide, was only beginning. And somewhere in the shadows, Palpatine's grin widened. He had underestimated neither the Jedi nor the clones, but he knew exactly how to turn hesitation into chaos. The galaxy held its breath. The Senate, as always, was the first to react, not with clarity, but with panic. Holonet transmissions flickered across the galaxy, senators whispering in fear of a Jedi-led coup. Security droids patrolled corridors that moments before had been deserted, sensing threats that did not exist. News feeds carried fragmentary reports, unusual clone movements near the Chancellor's office, sudden lockdowns in sensitive corridors, Jedi visible in public spaces commanding precision operations. The public, blissfully unaware of Order 65's legal basis, immediately assumed the worst. From her office, Mon Mothma watched the chaos unfold with measured concern. Though the rebellion had yet to fully form, whispers of discontent in the Senate were already growing into murmurs of insurgency. "If the Jedi are willing to act against the Chancellor," she murmured to her aide, What does that say about the Republic's stability? And what does it mean for us? Back inside the temple, the council observed the first signs of political fallout. Every senator in Coruscant sensed a violation, though they did not yet understand its legality. The clones, though disciplined, were conscious of their own actions in a way they never had been during conventional campaigns. Commander Cody reported back to Mace Windu. Units are in position. Minimal exposure, but the panic among the civilian staff is growing. They are calling this an attempted coup. Mace Windu exhaled slowly. Yes, he said, and perception will be as dangerous as any enemy we face. The public believes we are traitors. That perception may be harder to counter than Palpatine himself. Obi-Wan, monitoring clone positions, noted a subtle shift in their behavior. Hesitation, doubt, fear of misinterpretation. All were influencing actions despite obedience coding. They're human, Obi-Wan said quietly to himself. Even machines made of flesh carry conscience. Meanwhile, Anakin Skywalker's confusion deepened. He had remained silent as instructed, but every instinct in the Force screamed that the operation was extraordinary and dangerous. He glanced at Mace Windu. Why is Palpatine still alive? Why hasn't anyone acted yet? Because he is not a simple target, Mace replied. He manipulates. He anticipates. He tests. From his office, Palpatine observed every development with meticulous calm. The clone battalion's progress was slower than expected, not due to Jedi hesitation, but because of civilian interference and rising political panic. Senators and aides were beginning to resist subtle instructions. Automated defenses triggered alarms and distractions. Palpatine noted each with clinical interest. The Jedi are precise, he murmured, but precision alone cannot save them from chaos. On the Senate floor, accusations flew. They are attempting a coup, shouted one senator. The Jedi overstepped their bounds, cried another. Communications systems buzzed with alerts, and holonet coverage painted a picture of instability across Coruscant. Mace Windu remained unmoved. We act within the law, he said. The perception of treason is irrelevant when the Republic itself is at risk. Outside, in the corridors and maintenance shafts of the Spire, the clones were caught in the subtle web of uncertainty. Commander Bly adjusted formations. Hold positions. Civilian presence is too high. Wait for Jedi guidance. Cody confirmed similar adjustments across multiple floors. Obedience coding remained intact, but hesitation lingered, slowing operations and testing the patience of those involved. Anakin, sensing the mounting tension, felt a surge of emotion he had not allowed in months. Loyalty to the Jedi. Loyalty to Palpatine. Duty to the Republic. The Force tugged him in all directions at once. He stood silently, weighing the implications of each movement, each decision. Within Palpatine's office, the Chancellor prepared a subtle display of power. Nothing open or violent. He did not yet need it. A faint aura of the dark side spread through the corridors, causing minor disorientation among clones at the edges of the operation, creating just enough disruption to force careful recalibration. Mace Windu noted it immediately. He interferes, he said, but it is not full assault. He seeks to test, not destroy. Obi-Wan adjusted his strategy, guiding the clone battalions past the areas most affected. Focus on containment, he said. Do not engage unless necessary. This is a surgical operation, not a battle. Anakin's unease grew. He had sensed the Chancellor's manipulations and felt the moral weight pressing down on the clones. For the first time, he realized that this mission was not only a test of obedience, but also a test of conscience. Every soldier, every Jedi, every civilian was part of a moral equation that could change the fate of the galaxy. Outside the temple, Republic security forces noticed the increased clone activity. News of the Jedi-led operation reached lower districts. Panic spread in waves, with holonet transmissions and senatorial reports painting a narrative of attempted overthrow. Every citizen became an unwitting participant in a drama that would determine whether the Republic survived or collapsed. Palpatine observed all of this with patience, his grin imperceptible, calculating. They believe law and morality guide them, he whispered. Yet chaos will always find a way to teach even the wisest a lesson. In that charged silence, the Jedi and clones continued their advance, each aware that perception could be as lethal as any lightsaber. Every decision from this point forward would ripple across the galaxy, touching lives, shifting allegiances, and forcing the Chancellor to act in ways he had never anticipated. The operation was no longer merely about removing a threat. It was about testing the limits of obedience, judgment, and trust, and setting the stage for a confrontation that would define the Republic forever. The corridors of the Senate spire felt alive, a predator's heartbeat vibrating through reinforced durasteel. Clone battalions moved like clockwork, yet each footstep echoed the tension of hesitation. Even disciplined soldiers, bred for absolute obedience, were sensing the moral weight pressing against them. They were no longer confronting separatist droids. They were marching toward a man who had commanded their loyalty, guided their every move, and earned their trust over a decade of war. And yet, the Jedi, guardians of peace and law, had commanded them to act. Commander Rex felt the pressure acutely. He had led countless missions, faced droid armies on worlds teetering on the brink of annihilation, and survived engagements that had broken entire battalions. But this was unlike anything he had ever faced. Every clone in his squad carried the same internal struggle: obey the law of the Jedi, or honor the bonds of loyalty to the man who had led them for so long. "Hold formation," he murmured, speaking more to himself than to his troops. "We do this clean or not at all." Mace Windu's voice carried through the Force to every Jedi in the spire, a calm but commanding presence that guided and reassured. He had made the choice, and now he bore the consequences, not just personally, but for the fate of the galaxy. "Focus," he said, silently to himself and the Force. "Balance must be maintained. The Republic must endure, whatever the cost." Anakin Skywalker followed closely behind, eyes darting between the advancing clones and the shadows that cloaked the corridors. He had never felt so conflicted. His loyalty to the Jedi was unquestioned, yet the bond he had formed with Palpatine over the years was more than mentorship. It was familial, almost paternal. Every fiber of his being screamed that something was wrong, that he could intervene, yet he had been instructed to stay passive. The Force tugged at him, warning of manipulation, but it did not yet reveal the true danger. Palpatine, meanwhile, was every inch the predator within his office. He had anticipated many approaches, many stratagems, but the meticulous coordination of Jedi guidance with clone precision was unexpected. He allowed himself to remain calm, almost serene, while activating layers of hidden defenses. Sith holocrons, long stored and hidden beneath reinforced floors, pulsed faintly with ancient power. Shadows bent subtly around the corridors, illusions dancing at the edge of perception, designed to disorient, confuse, and test the resolve of the clones and Jedi alike. The first real confrontation occurred in the approach to the inner sanctum. Automated defense systems, subtly influenced by the dark side, triggered in patterns designed to slow and confuse. Blaster fire crackled as minor security droids attempted to intercept the advancing forces. Mace Windu's lightsaber ignited with a calm hum, deflecting the initial bursts of energy with precision. Plo Koon extended a protective barrier through the Force, guiding the clones past deadly traps without incident. Every movement was a dance of discipline and moral calculation, a ballet of war tempered by the Force. Anakin sensed the subtle manipulations of the Chancellor, the faint currents of the dark side weaving through corridors and rooms. He felt it tug at the edges of his mind, whispering temptations and fear. "The Chancellor is testing them, testing me, testing all of us." The young Jedi's heart raced. He wanted to act, to intervene, yet he remained restrained. Each hesitation carried the potential to tip the balance, to turn law into chaos. In the corridor outside the Chancellor's private office, Cody and Rex coordinated multiple squads. "Split teams," Cody said, his voice calm but edged with tension. "Two to the main access. One covers lateral entry points." Minimal exposure, surgical precision. Rex acknowledged the order. The clones obeyed with a trained efficiency of soldiers, yet the subtle moral weight of their mission made them slow, deliberate, calculating. The first real test of loyalty came when a squad encountered security personnel, senators, aides, and minor officials, who refused to vacate their positions. Cody's voice cut through the tension. Do not fire unless fired upon. Move carefully. The clones adjusted, using non-lethal methods to redirect personnel, while Jedi guidance kept the Force calm, minimizing panic. The operation, while precise, carried a strain unlike any battlefield experience the clones had known. Within his office, Palpatine observed every movement with subtle amusement. His eyes, sharp and calculating, traced every figure moving through the halls. The Force allowed him to anticipate movements before they happened. They think discipline alone will succeed, he murmured. Yet the true weapon is doubt, hesitation, and the fragility of trust. He extended his awareness, subtly influencing the peripheral minds of the advancing clones. Not enough to break their loyalty entirely, but enough to force slight pauses, micro-decisions, hesitation that could be exploited. The Jedi felt it too, their senses detecting the dissonance, but could not fully locate the source. The Chancellor's manipulation was precise, measured, and insidious. Mace Windu, attuned to these subtleties, signaled adjustments through the Force. Compensate for hesitation. Guide them, but do not force. Maintain order without unnecessary exposure. His voice, silent yet resonant, wove through the minds of every Jedi involved, reinforcing focus and discipline. Anakin felt the Force grow heavier. Each movement of the clones, each redirection of the Jedi, every calculated pause, all compounded into a wave of tension that threatened to overwhelm him. His thoughts flickered to the Chancellor. What if the Jedi were wrong? What if the law they wielded could not contain the evil they sought to eliminate? He pushed the questions aside, focusing instead on the mission. As the squads reached the entrance to Palpatine's office, the Chancellor initiated the next phase of his defense. A wave of Force energy pulsed outward, subtle yet disorienting. Clones stumbled, their blasters momentarily misaligned. Jedi instincts detected the anomaly. Mace Windu and Plo Koon reinforced the advancing units, using the Force to steady their footing and direct their path. Palpatine's voice, calm and deliberate, echoed through the corridors. You believe justice demands my removal. But justice, without understanding, is merely chaos in disguise. Do you know what you are truly doing? Mace Windu raised his lightsaber, ready to cut through resistance, but not yet igniting the blade fully. We act not for vengeance, but for the Republic, he said. Your manipulations end today, Chancellor. Anakin's pulse raced. The tension in the Force had become almost tangible, wrapping around him like chains. Every instinct screamed that the Chancellor's power was greater than any single Jedi, yet the clones, guided with precision, advanced methodically. The moral complexity of the operation weighed on him, threatening to fracture his calm. The first direct confrontation occurred as Palpatine attempted to manipulate the neural implants of a squad at the edge of the formation. Rex's instincts detected the interference. He's using the Force on them. Compensate, Rex shouted. Cody adjusted positions to counteract, while Jedi Masters reinforced the affected clones through subtle Force corrections. It was a test of obedience, of focus, and of moral fortitude. Clones had never faced a scenario where following orders conflicted with loyalty to a leader they respected. Jedi had never directed a military operation so surgical, so morally complex, so fraught with potential for disaster. Palpatine's manipulations were relentless. He did not attack directly, but each subtle nudge, each suggestion, each hesitation sown into clone minds was a trial for the Jedi and their soldiers alike. The corridors became a chessboard, each move precise, each pause deliberate, every decision loaded with consequence. Anakin felt the weight of history pressing on him. He sensed the Force reacting to Palpatine's dark influence, yet he could not act. His restraint was deliberate, but every instinct screamed for immediate intervention. The young Jedi realized the operation was no longer merely about law or duty. It was about the moral integrity of every soul involved. As the squads neared the office's inner door, Palpatine's calm demeanor finally cracked, just slightly. He had underestimated the precision and discipline of the Jedi and clones combined. His subtle manipulations, while effective, could not halt the advance. Each step forward tightened the noose around him. The culmination of years of planning now turned against him. Mace Windu, Obi-Wan, and Plo Koon coordinated the final approach. Jedi focus and clone discipline blended seamlessly, every movement calculated to avoid casualties while achieving the objective. Anakin, feeling the full moral weight of the operation, clenched his fists, aware that the moment of confrontation was imminent. Palpatine, sensing the culmination of the Jedi's operation, prepared for the final phase. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned every approach. His voice, smooth and chilling, echoed through the corridors. So you have come to decide my fate with law, with force, with soldiers at your command. Very well. Let us see if conviction can triumph over cunning. The last step had been taken. The operation had reached its peak tension. Every Jedi, every clone, every conscious observer in the Force held their breath. The confrontation with Palpatine was imminent, and the consequences, moral, political, and cosmic, would reverberate through the galaxy. For the first time, the Republic's guardians were not merely executing orders. They were facing a moral trial, a test of conscience, and a confrontation that would redefine the future. The air inside the Spire's inner sanctum was thick with tension, every molecule humming with latent energy from the Force. Palpatine had anticipated intrusion, subterfuge, and assassination attempts over the years, yet this precise, lawful strike by the Republic's own guardians was unprecedented. The moment had arrived. Jedi and clones stood on the threshold of the Chancellor's office, their formation tight, movements deliberate. Anakin felt the Force vibrating like a living entity around him, thrumming with potential danger and moral complexity. He knew that what occurred here would echo across the galaxy for decades. Mace Windu stepped forward, his purple lightsaber casting long, sharp shadows across the polished floors. Obi-Wan flanked him, blade ignited, a symbol of calm and discipline. Plo Koon and Shaak Ti positioned themselves at strategic angles, both ready to intercept any unexpected movement. Behind them, Rex and Cody coordinated clone positions, ensuring that no corridor could be exploited by a single misstep. The clones' blasters were trained but held in check, a testament to discipline over instinct, obedience over reflex. Palpatine rose from his throne, his presence commanding the room without overt aggression. His golden brown eyes glinted with amusement, but beneath that veneer was the cunning mind of a predator cornered, calculating each nuance, each hesitation, each moral choice that could be exploited. "You come," he said, voice calm, smooth, dripping with subtle menace. "You believe the Republic is threatened. You believe I am a danger. And yet, here you are, stepping into my domain, wielding law, loyalty, and the Force as your weapons. Do you understand what you are doing?" Mace Windu's response was measured. "We understand exactly what we are doing. You manipulate the Republic, its leaders, and its citizens. You sow deceit and corruption. Today, the Republic demands justice." Palpatine's gaze shifted subtly, focusing first on the clones. "And you, my loyal soldiers," he said softly, "you who have fought so long, who have obeyed without question, now you are asked to act against me. Do you question the law? Or do you question the morality of your orders?" Rex felt a shiver pass through his squad. Obedience coding dictated their compliance, yet the Chancellor's words, subtle, precise, echoed in their minds, teasing the edge of hesitation. Cody's voice cut through the mental dissonance. "Hold formation. The law is clear. Execute the operation precisely. Nothing else matters." Anakin's pulse quickened. He felt the Force rippling like turbulent water, each Jedi and clone responding to currents of fear, doubt, loyalty, and duty. He could see the Chancellor's manipulations at the edges, subtle nudges influencing perceptions, yet he was not fully certain what was real and what was suggestion. Every step, every decision in the next moments could tip the galaxy toward stability or chaos. Palpatine moved deliberately, slow, but commanding, extending his awareness through the Force. He did not attack physically, yet the air seemed to vibrate with latent energy, a subtle but pervasive pressure that forced Jedi and clones to adjust instinctively. Lightsabers and blasters were ready, but nothing could fully counter the invisible hand of manipulation. Mace Windu recognized the subtle shifts. He resists, but indirectly, he said. Not with brute force, but with influence. Stay disciplined. Do not be distracted. The clones advanced, each step measured and precise. Blasters were trained carefully, but only on potential targets that threatened the operation. Rex and Cody guided them through subtle recalibrations, ensuring their movements remained synchronized and focused. Yet hesitation lingered, a shadow over their efficiency, a moral echo of the conflict imposed by Order 65. Anakin stepped closer to Mace, struggling to contain the tempest of emotions within him. Master Windu, I feel him pulling at the clones, at me, at everyone. How can we fight something that isn't visible? Focus on what you can control, Anakin, Mace replied, his voice calm but edged with urgency. The Force guides, but it does not act for you. Precision and judgment are paramount. Palpatine extended his presence further. Subtle illusions, twisting perceptions of the corridors. A clone briefly misread a doorway, stopping mid-step. Another stumbled over an innocuous panel. The Jedi guided them through, stabilizing the flow of movement, but the Chancellor's manipulations were persistent, testing not just obedience, but clarity of thought and moral resolve. The first direct engagement occurred when Palpatine, recognizing the approach of Jedi too close to his personal defenses, initiated a wave of Force lightning, not yet lethal, but concentrated enough to disable automated defenses and threaten the unprepared. Shaak Ti deftly redirected the energy, using the Force to protect nearby clones, while Obi-Wan intercepted minor arcs with precise movements of his lightsaber. Maintain focus. Mace shouted internally through the Force, reinforcing discipline across the assembly. Anakin's hesitation grew. He sensed the moral weight pressing on him, yet he also felt the manipulative tendrils of the dark side reaching into his mind. Every instinct screamed to protect Palpatine. Every training screamed to obey the Jedi Council. The conflict was unbearable, yet he did not act, at least not yet. The clones, under Rex and Cody's coordination, adjusted positions to counter subtle disruptions. They moved in perfect synchronicity, a living testament to discipline, but also painfully aware of the stakes. Each pause, each micro-decision, carried consequences for loyalty, law, and morality. Palpatine's subtle influence extended further, probing weaknesses. The Force around the spire shivered, every Jedi sensing not just the danger to themselves, but the potential collapse of the Republic if missteps occurred. The Chancellor's power was not merely in his strength, it was in the manipulation of perception, control over subtle forces, and ability to exploit hesitation. Mace Windu assessed the battlefield, the clones' formation, Jedi positions, Palpatine's subtle manipulations. Every element was balanced precariously. One misstep could result in either the escape of the Chancellor or catastrophic civilian casualties. The moral weight was immense, and every Jedi felt it. Anakin, sensing the growing intensity, took a step forward despite restraint. The Force roared around him, whispering of potential catastrophe and unforeseen outcomes. Yet Mace Windu's influence kept him anchored, discipline over impulse, law over loyalty, order over chaos. Palpatine's voice cut through the corridor again, calm and measured, almost conversational. You believe you act in the name of justice, yet justice is more than obedience. It is understanding, foresight, wisdom, all qualities you wield. But do you wield them fully? Mace Windu raised his lightsaber slightly. We act in the name of the Republic. Your deceit ends today. Palpatine's expression did not change, but the subtle tension in his shoulders betrayed the strain. He recognized the precision, discipline, and moral fortitude marshaled against him. The Jedi were not merely executing an order. They were enacting a trial, a test of conscience, judgment, and will. And yet, his own power was formidable, his control over the dark side and subtle manipulations sufficient to create doubt and hesitation, even among the most disciplined. The first fully lethal engagement was avoided, but the confrontation had escalated to a mental and moral battlefield. The Force crackled with tension, echoing with every decision, hesitation, and impulse. Palpatine's subtle manipulations tested not only clones and Jedi, but the very structure of Order 65 itself. Could loyalty, discipline, and law triumph over cunning, manipulation, and centuries of accumulated power? Anakin Skywalker felt the moment arriving. The moral and physical collision was imminent, and every breath, every heartbeat, every decision from this point forward could define the fate of the Republic and his own destiny. He knew the final test, the confrontation with Palpatine, was near. Outside, the city continued unaware of the extraordinary events unfolding in the spire. Civilians, senators, and aides were caught in ripples of panic, but the true drama, the collision of law, force, and morality, occurred in silence, behind reinforced walls. Palpatine's voice, calm yet dripping with menace, echoed one last time across the corridors. You think yourselves judges, executioners, saviors, but in truth, you are players in a game far greater than you perceive. Let us see if conviction is enough to overcome cunning. The Jedi tightened their formation. The clones adjusted, every step precise, every motion deliberate. The final approach to Palpatine's inner sanctum was underway, a delicate dance of law, force, discipline, and moral calculation. The culmination of Order 65, the confrontation that would determine the future of the Republic, had begun. The inner sanctum of the Chancellor's office was a crucible of tension, its polished floors reflecting the calm, commanding figures of the Jedi Masters as they advanced. Light from Coruscant's skyline slanted across the chamber, illuminating Palpatine in a halo of deceptive serenity. Yet every subtle shift of his posture, every micro-expression, revealed a predator ready to strike, a mind calculating decades of manipulation and contingencies. This was the moment where Order 65 reached its fulcrum, the apex of law, loyalty, and moral judgment poised against the cunning and raw power of the dark side. Mace Windu stepped forward, lightsaber ignited, its purple hue casting long shadows. We act in the name of the Republic. Surrender, Chancellor, and this will end without further bloodshed. His voice was calm, authoritative, a pillar amidst the storm of anticipation. Palpatine's lips curved into a faint smile, almost imperceptible. Surrender, he echoed, the word curling with amusement. Do you not understand the game you have entered? Surrender is irrelevant. The law you wield is not yet sufficient to bind me. Conviction alone cannot overcome the intricacies of the Force. Anakin Skywalker felt the oppressive presence of the dark side surge outward. The Force around Palpatine shimmered with malevolence, yet disciplined and measured. It was not blind aggression, it was precision, subtle yet deadly, designed to destabilize both thought and conscience. Anakin's chest tightened. He sensed the full weight of the moral dilemma. Intervene and risk fracturing the Jedi's authority, or obey and witness the culmination of Order 65's execution. Clone squads flanked the Jedi, blasters trained but fingers restrained. Commander Cody and Rex moved like conductors of a deadly symphony, adjusting positions, compensating for subtle anomalies in clone behavior induced by the Chancellor's manipulations. One misstep could trigger hesitation, a fatal error in a room where every second counted. Palpatine extended his awareness subtly, targeting the edges of obedience coding in the clones. Neural implants quivered under the Force's subtle push, creating micropauses in movement, seconds of indecision that the Jedi instantly sensed. Mace Windu responded with the Force, steadying clones, guiding their steps, neutralizing doubt without overt control. Every action was a blend of moral clarity and tactical precision. You hesitate, Palpatine said, his voice smooth yet laden with accusation, because your conviction is incomplete. The Jedi claim justice, yet justice requires understanding. You act as executioners, yet understand nothing of the consequences. Do you know what power you face? Mace Windu advanced further. We understand enough. Your manipulation ends now. Palpatine's eyes gleamed with a dangerous intelligence. Suddenly, a surge of Force lightning exploded outward, not indiscriminate, but targeted. Electrical arcs licked along the walls, narrowly missing clones and Jedi alike. Shaak Ti and Plo Koon raised precise force shields, deflecting the deadly currents while guiding nearby soldiers to safety. Anakin felt the raw power surge through the room. He realized Palpatine's mastery was more than combat, it was mental warfare. Every subtle pulse, every suggestion planted in the minds of clones and Jedi alike, was a test of discipline, morality, and loyalty. And in that moment, he understood that law, power, and conviction could be manipulated as easily as physical might. The first physical confrontation occurred when Palpatine used the Force to hurl furniture and objects with deadly precision, testing the Jedi's reflexes and control. Mace Windu deflected the first set of attacks, his movements fluid and precise, while Obi-Wan intervened to shield the clones. The room became a blur of motion, lightsabers dancing, blasters adjusting aim, clones maintaining formation despite the chaos. You will not win, Palpatine hissed, a serpentine cadence in his voice. Your law is fragile. Your morality is vulnerable. You rely on precision, yet cannot anticipate every choice I force upon you. Mace Windu pressed forward, careful to remain within measured distance. Your words are empty threats. The Republic will not fall under manipulation and deceit. Anakin's heart pounded. The young Jedi could feel the moral crucible tightening around him. Every instinct, every lesson, every fiber of his being demanded action. But each decision carried consequences far beyond immediate survival. One misstep could fracture the Jedi Council's authority, compromise the Republic, and empower Palpatine's influence permanently. Palpatine's manipulations reached further, subtle arcs of the dark side influencing the environment. Lights flickered, shadows moved unnaturally, and the Force itself seemed to resist the Jedi's guidance. Yet Mace Windu remained steadfast, focusing both his blade and the Force on containment and precision. He understood that lethal action was inevitable, but timing was everything. Anakin's mind raced. The moral dilemma crystallized. He could act independently, intervening to save Palpatine, or adhere to the Council's directive, allowing justice to be executed. His internal conflict mirrored the larger battle. Law versus loyalty, duty versus affection, morality versus manipulation. The Chancellor's defense escalated. A second wave of lightning surged, stronger and more targeted. Blasters fired with lethal intent, yet Jedi shields absorbed most energy. Clones ducked instinctively, guided subtly by Force nudges, but one misaligned shot could prove fatal. Palpatine's strategy was clear: disrupt morale, exploit hesitation, and create fractures in loyalty. Mace Windu pressed forward despite the onslaught, blade cutting arcs through the air with deadly precision. He deflected debris and attacks with skill that had been honed over decades, maintaining discipline and focus. The clones advanced in precise formation, each movement guided by Jedi influence and independent judgment. The battle was as much about moral fortitude as physical prowess. Anakin's inner struggle reached its peak. He could feel the Force tugging him toward Palpatine, whispers of loyalty, mentorship, and temptation. Yet he also sensed the Jedi's unwavering purpose, the moral clarity that drove Mace Windu and Obi-Wan forward. He knew that any action now would define not only the outcome of this confrontation, but also his own destiny. Palpatine, sensing Anakin's indecision, directed a focused surge of the dark side toward him. The young Jedi's vision blurred, perception distorted, shadows flickering unnaturally. Mace Windu extended a stabilizing presence through the Force, guiding Anakin and reinforcing discipline. The moral and physical battlefield intertwined seamlessly, every choice a reflection of conscience and training. In that instant, Anakin made his decision. He held himself steady, restraining personal impulse, and focused entirely on supporting the Jedi and clone forces. The Force flowed through him, amplifying his instincts, stabilizing clone positions, and deflecting Palpatine's subtle manipulations. He had chosen duty over loyalty, law over personal attachment, a moment that would echo through the Force for years to come. Palpatine's defenses, though formidable, were gradually overwhelmed by the combined precision of Jedi skill and clone discipline. Every surge of the dark side was met with an equally disciplined counter, every subtle manipulation nullified by coordinated judgment. The room trembled as the final steps of the operation unfolded. Mace Windu advanced to strike, positioning himself carefully to ensure precision. Palpatine, recognizing the inevitability, prepared a final desperate maneuver, a surge of raw dark side energy aimed at incapacitating the Jedi physically and mentally. But it was too late. Windu's blade fell with calculated force, cutting through defenses while maintaining focus on minimizing collateral damage. The Chancellor's lightning arcs were disrupted midstream, his influence on clones nullified. The room was silent for a heartbeat. Palpatine's expression remained calm, yet the tension in the Force revealed the magnitude of the blow. The Jedi had acted with precision, law, and moral authority, and the culmination of Order 65 had reached its apex. Anakin exhaled, the Force around him settling gradually, though still charged with residual tension. He had faced the most complex moral and physical test of his life, and had chosen the path of discipline, law, and justice, despite personal attachments and temptation. Outside the office, the clones adjusted their positions, maintaining formation as the threat ended. Their obedience coding had been tested, their loyalty stretched to its limits, and yet they had acted with honor, guided by the Force and precise orders. The Republic's guardians had executed the operation with minimal casualties, maximum precision, and a moral clarity that few could have anticipated. The confrontation had concluded, but its consequences were only beginning to unfold. The moral, political, and personal ramifications of Palpatine's defeat or incapacitation would ripple through the galaxy for decades. The Jedi had acted, the Republic had been protected, and the weight of choice had been fully realized. The aftermath of the confrontation with Chancellor Palpatine was unlike any event the Republic, or the Jedi, had ever endured. Coruscant's skyline, illuminated by the glow of spire lights and distant starships, seemed to pulse with a tension that mirrored the galaxy itself. News of the Jedi-led execution of Order 65 spread through the Senate and lower districts, sparking shock, confusion, and fear. Yet the Republic, at least for now, had been spared the slow, insidious collapse Palpatine had orchestrated for decades. Mace Windu stood in the aftermath of the battle, the silenced hum of his lightsaber the only sound in the Chancellor's office. Palpatine had been incapacitated, bound in Force restraints, his aura of manipulation dimmed but not entirely extinguished. The room was littered with overturned chairs, shattered consoles, and scorched panels from failed defensive maneuvers. But remarkably, no clone or Jedi had fallen. Every movement, every decision during the operation had been calculated for precision, morality, and minimal loss of life. Obi-Wan Kenobi stepped beside Windu, his expression grave. "It is done," he said, though even he knew the full consequences would take time to manifest. The Chancellor cannot manipulate the Republic from here. But the question now is, how will the galaxy interpret this action? Anakin Skywalker exhaled slowly, the moral weight finally easing slightly from his shoulders. He had chosen loyalty to the Jedi Council and the Republic over personal attachments, a decision that would haunt him for years. Yet he could feel the Force settling in new patterns, a subtle, cautious balance emerging. He understood now that true power was as much about restraint and morality as it was about combat prowess. Outside the office, the clone battalions had reorganized under the guidance of Rex and Cody. Despite the moral ambiguities of Order 65, the clones had executed their commands with near-perfect precision, guided by Jedi influence and their own disciplined judgment. Each soldier now carried a new sense of awareness. Loyalty was not blind obedience, but a balance between law, conscience, and ethical judgment. Across the Senate spire, confusion and fear ran rampant. Senators debated fervently on holonet feeds, interpreting the Jedi's action as either the salvation of the Republic or a dangerous precedent for unchecked power. Some hailed the Council's decisiveness, while others feared a new era of Jedi autocracy. Holonet broadcasts streamed the incident in fragmented reports. Clips of clones in formation, Jedi Masters confronting the Chancellor, and the moment Palpatine was restrained. Every system in the galaxy received a version of the story, each shaped by perception, bias, and rumor. Mon Mothma, observing from her office, understood the significance. The Jedi acted within law and with purpose, she whispered to her aide. But the perception of their authority will define the next era. Citizens and systems alike will now question who truly governs, the Senate, the Republic, or the Jedi themselves. Palpatine, though incapacitated, continued to radiate subtle influence through the Force. Even bound, he whispered in the edges of perception, weaving doubt, fear, and curiosity into the minds of senators and citizens. His power had been curtailed, yet his presence remained, a reminder that the dark side was never truly defeated, only contained. The Jedi Council convened immediately following the operation. Windu, Plo Koon, Shaak Ti, and Obi-Wan discussed the moral, legal, and political implications. Every choice made during Order 65 had been precise, yet the consequences were sprawling. Questions arose about precedent. Could a Jedi-led execution ever be justified again? Would the clones remain trustworthy under future orders? And most importantly, how would the Republic react to a display of such direct intervention? Anakin, seated slightly apart, reflected on his personal journey through the operation. The conflict had tested every facet of his being: loyalty, morality, discipline, and judgment. He had resisted temptation, upheld law over personal attachment, and witnessed the moral strength of the Jedi Council firsthand. And yet, he could not shake the lingering questions. Had the Republic truly been saved, or merely postponed from further corruption? Was Palpatine's influence truly ended, or had it merely been delayed? Meanwhile, across Coruscant, civilian systems responded in waves. Some hailed the Jedi as saviors, believing Order 65 had prevented tyranny. Others feared an overreach, the notion that a small cadre of warriors could bypass the political structure and act unilaterally, even if for the greater good. Propaganda and rumor spread faster than factual accounts, and Holonet commentators speculated endlessly about the future of the Republic, the role of the Jedi, and the potential for new threats to emerge from the shadows. The clone forces, too, experienced a profound shift. Orders had been executed flawlessly, yet their understanding of morality, loyalty, and obedience had deepened. Commander Rex, reflecting on the operation, spoke quietly to Cody. We followed orders, but we were tested in ways no battlefield ever prepared us for. The law guided us, but conscience kept us balanced. We are different now. Cody nodded solemnly. And the Republic will need soldiers who understand that difference. Not just obedience, but judgment. Even Palpatine, restrained but ever cunning, recognized the evolving consequences. His plans had been disrupted, yet the galaxy was not entirely safe from his influence. From behind his Force restraints, he whispered with subtle menace, planting seeds of doubt and manipulation. Every senator who had witnessed his fall would now be both wary and cautious, and every Jedi aware of the operation would remain vigilant for years. His influence might be diminished, but it was not eradicated. As the Republic began to stabilize, the Jedi faced a new reality. Their decisive action had saved countless systems from immediate collapse, yet it had also redefined their role in galactic governance. No longer merely peacekeepers, they had become arbiters of justice, wielding both law and force with authority that few fully understood. This new perception, while necessary for the immediate crisis, would complicate relations with senators, planetary governments, and the growing dissent among the populace. Anakin felt the weight of history pressing on him. The moral crucible of Order 65 had left its mark, shaping not only the fate of the Chancellor, but also the trajectory of the Republic. He understood the cost of action, the burden of choice, and the subtle interplay of law, loyalty, and morality. For the first time, He truly comprehended the delicate balance between power and responsibility, between loyalty and justice, between duty and personal attachment. As Palpatine was escorted to secure detention, the Jedi Council reflected on the operation's ultimate lesson. The galaxy's fate depended not only on strength and discipline, but on the moral clarity to wield power responsibly. Each action, each decision, each restraint carried consequences that rippled far beyond immediate outcomes. The execution of Order 65 had not simply removed a threat. It had reshaped the Republic, tested the limits of the Force, and defined the moral boundaries of those entrusted to protect the galaxy. The clones, the Jedi, and the citizens of the Republic alike would carry the memory of that day. For some, it would serve as a warning of unchecked authority. For others, it would stand as a testament to moral courage, precision, and the power of law tempered by conscience. And for Anakin, it would remain a pivotal moment, a defining crucible that had tested loyalty, morality, and personal restraint to the utmost degree. The galaxy, ever vast and ever complex, now faced a moment of uncertain peace. Palpatine was contained, but the seeds of future conflict, doubt, and ambition had been sown. The Jedi had acted decisively, yet the moral and political consequences of their actions would reverberate across systems, shaping alliances, rebellions, and decisions for years to come. And in the quiet moments following the operation, as the clones returned to their posts and the Jedi reconvened in council chambers, the Force itself seemed to whisper of future trials. Reminders that the galaxy's balance was fragile, that power carried consequences, and that morality was a path walked not just in moments of victory, but in moments of choice. The execution of Order 65 had achieved its immediate goal, Palpatine's removal as Chancellor and the prevention of further manipulation. But the galaxy's future remained uncertain, dependent not only on law and order, but on the continued vigilance, wisdom, and moral courage of the Jedi, the Republic, and every individual who chose to act with conscience and judgment. And as Anakin looked out over Coruscant from the Jedi Temple spire, he understood that the galaxy had been changed forever, not merely by power or law or loyalty, but by the choices of those who dared to act in accordance with their convictions. The galaxy exhaled cautiously in the wake of Order 65's execution. Palpatine was no longer free to manipulate senators, engineer crises, or twist the Republic toward tyranny. Yet the consequences of the Jedi's intervention reverberated far beyond the confines of the Senate spire. Across countless star systems, citizens, leaders, and soldiers were forced to reconcile with a truth that few had anticipated. The Republic had survived, but at the cost of the Jedi stepping beyond their traditional role as peacekeepers into the precarious position of enforcers and arbiters. Mace Windu, Obi-Wan, and Plo Koon convened to review the outcomes, their discussion a careful balance of pride and apprehension. They had succeeded in their mission, but the galaxy's perception of the Jedi had irrevocably changed. Where once they were neutral guardians, they were now active participants in the political fabric, wielding the Force not only as a tool of peace, but as a sword of justice. Some systems hailed them as heroes, others whispered fears of unchecked power and potential corruption. The delicate equilibrium of trust and fear would shape political debates for decades to come. Anakin Skywalker, sitting apart from the council, reflected on the personal toll of the operation. He had resisted temptation, prioritized law over personal loyalty, and witnessed the execution of a man who had been a mentor, a father figure, and a friend. The moral weight of these choices pressed upon him like gravity, yet he had emerged wiser, disciplined, and painfully aware of the complexity of wielding authority. He understood that heroism was never simple, that even righteous action could carry unforeseen consequences, and that the Force demanded both action and restraint. The clones, too, experienced profound transformation. For years, they had operated under strict obedience, following orders with unparalleled precision. Order 65 had tested more than their combat prowess. It had tested their morality, their judgment, and their loyalty. Commander X, reflecting on the operation, understood that the clones had become more than instruments of war. They were moral agents capable of discerning duty from conscience. Cody agreed, recognizing that future engagements would require not just obedience, but independent judgment and ethical reasoning. Their evolution would influence military conduct and clone deployment in all future campaigns. Inside a vast, circular chamber, with high transparent steel windows overlooking Coruscant's glowing cityscape, Yoda meditates on a central dais, while Mace Windu stands with hands clasped behind his back, and other Jedi Masters watch tensely. Hollow projections of clone command hierarchies float mid-air. Dramatic overhead lighting casts long shadows across polished floors. Cinematic digital sci-fi illustration. Epic space opera tone. High detail textures. Dynamic atmospheric perspective. Panoramic view from the Jedi Temple spire, showing endless lanes of glowing city traffic, towering spires, and distant industrial storms. A faint haze of pollution catches the last rays of sunset. The camera angle is slightly tilted downward from the temple, emphasizing the vast scale of the city planet. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, epic space opera atmosphere, high detail lighting and reflective surfaces. Medium shot of Jocasta Nu entering the Jedi Council chamber. A small hovering data cylinder projecting encrypted clone orders. The council reacts with tension, some leaning forward, others stiffening. Warm, ambient chamber lighting contrasts with the cold blue glow of the hologram. Cinematic high-detail sci-fi illustration. Epic space opera tone. Dramatic lighting highlighting expressions. Wide shot of a tall, ornate office atop a Coruscant spire. Gold and shadow reflecting off a massive window behind the seated chancellor. He leans back contemplatively, fingers poised, sensing the Jedi's approach. City lights and distant starships create bokeh effects outside. Cinematic sci-fi illustration, epic space opera tone. High-detail digital rendering, moody and suspenseful lighting. Over-the-shoulder perspective from behind Mace Windu as he addresses the council. Jedi Masters sit in semicircle, their faces tense under dramatic lighting, some whispering. The Force's energy is subtly visualized as faint glowing currents in the air. Deep cinematic shadows, epic space opera style, highly detailed digital painting, focused on expressions and tension. Abstract, surreal illustration of Yoda's vision, fire consuming the Jedi Temple, clone troopers pausing mid-action, a hooded figure looming over a burning city. The vision is semi-transparent, layered over the real council chamber. Dynamic, swirling lighting effects, cinematic sci-fi style, epic space opera tone, highly detailed, atmospheric and foreboding. Aerial perspective of clone troopers lined up in perfect formation on Coruscant streets below, bathed in soft blue light of street signs and the ambient glow of city towers. Their armor reflects subtle hints of holographic displays and nearby holoprojections. Cinematic digital sci-fi illustration, epic scale, dramatic lighting, high detail reflections, atmospheric perspective emphasizing order and tension. Close-up on Mace Windu stepping to the center of the chamber, his purple lightsaber unlit but casting subtle reflections. Jedi Masters watch in silent tension, Yoda raising a hand in deliberation. Light streams through high windows, emphasizing dust particles and the weight of the moment. Cinematic sci-fi digital art, epic space opera, dramatic chiaroscuro lighting, high detail expressions. Extreme close-up of glowing, floating holographic diagrams and clone command codes projected above a polished council table. Hands of Jedi Mace Obi-Wan hover nearby, reaching out with concentration. Light refracts through transparent elements, casting complex reflections across the chamber floor. Cinematic, high-detail digital sci-fi, epic space opera tone, visually dense and atmospheric. Bird's-eye view from high above the city as streams of flying vehicles move along luminous traffic lanes, oblivious to the unfolding crisis in the temple. Light pollution creates layers of atmospheric depth, distant spires fade into haze, cinematic sci-fi illustration, epic space opera, high-detail cityscape, dramatic lighting and scale emphasizing contrast between public normalcy and hidden tension.